Hi everybody, this is Dan and Chris from Prehistoric Facts, and this is an answering questions episode. So let's get right to it, shall we? Got two kinds of questions. All right, Brendan from Morris, New York. He actually says, which state should I volunteer work in museums? Should I do some volunteer work in museums? Texas, Utah, Texas, Utah, California, Chicago. Well, just so you know that, Brenda, Chicago's not really a state, it's a city. So basically, to let you know about that. But anyways, in terms of volunteer work, like in, say, like paleontology or geology, basically most museums tend to actually have usually a lot of museums tend to actually have room for volunteers to actually do stuff like this. But it's just a very small amount of work that you're actually going to do. So it's not really going to be like a huge amount of work like the professionals do. So it's really going to depend on what the museum wants you to do. And pretty much, I'd say that probably the best places to actually possibly do some, like say dinosaurs. Like in terms of dinosaur fossils or other ways to actually knowing anything about dinosaur fossils, I would actually say around the Rocky Mountain states like Utah or Colorado, because those usually are very hot or like huge hot spots for dinosaur paleontology. I mean, you could try South Dakota, but basically they're not going to have that many. But basically, in the museum ways of South Dakota, all you have is the Black Hills Institute of Geological Research, and also you have the School of Mines and Technology Geology Museum. But they don't really take volunteers. So basically, they actually just kind of hire people to do handle that kind of stuff. And like maybe the Museum of the Rockies in Montana, that could actually be a good place. I mean, there's all sorts of museums that can actually do this. It's mainly going to be public museums. Public museums tend to actually do this. Private museums tend to don't do this, just because you see they actually tend to actually have volunteers that are actually in college, basically just college students that are like in the biology department or in the geology department, because that's what they really actually kind of go for. So. But I mean, any kind of museum could actually have volunteer work. I'd say just look up most museums around the United States, or otherwise maybe near your area, and actually see if they actually do have some like volunteers that they can actually have for like teaching people about paleontology or geology in that manner. But I would actually say that you can do some volunteer work at like I say. Like I mentioned in the previous video, that I've actually done some volunteer work. I've done volunteering for this traveling exhibit museum, basically, traveling museum, basically. It's basically a company called Colossal Fossils, and it's a nice traveling museum. I'd say it's actually. It's small, but basically it's actually fun for all ages. So basically, and I got to teach a bunch of kids about prehistoric life, especially with Smilodon, because I was kind of actually right near the Smilodon skeleton. So that was kind of fun to actually teach kids about the saber-toothed cat, and just having that moment of actually you accomplished something, basically giving your knowledge to kids that are basically want to learn about paleontology and geology and basically about prehistoric life, and to see the look on their faces, to see like they go like wow, and it's a great feeling, and I'd say if anybody that wants to teach kids about prehistoric life, go for it. Go actually teach kids about paleontology, like a basic, pretty much, like say if you're a college student, try to convince like an elementary school to actually have you come on down and actually teach the kids about paleontology, or otherwise go to a library and go to your local library and actually do something like this. Give like lectures about paleontology. Because I'm thinking about doing some lectures, but I'm gonna actually have to see if there's any way I can actually do that, and so hopefully it can actually work out. And and Khalid, he actually is asking me, uh, which species of dinosaurs actually dominated in their periods, like in the Cretaceous, Jurassic, and the Triassic periods. Were the Spinosaurus, T-Rex, and Troodons ruled the Earth within the same era or time? Well, technically, dinosaurs lived in periods, but they did live in a geologic time of an era called the Mesozoic era. But the dinosaurs actually kind of lived in like certain periods in time of the Mesozoic. So they actually lived in the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous period. We actually prefer the periods basically for the Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. They're not really called eras, is because you see eras is actually a longer stretch of time. So that really actually kind of comes into play there. But anyway, let's actually talk about dinosaurs that actually dominated in certain periods. Let's start with the Triassic, because that's when the dinosaurs actually started to come around. But basically, dinosaurs are very rare during this time, so it was pretty much dominated by, you can see the Triassic was dominated by reptiles like archosaurs and all these like primitive type of reptiles that were like huge. They were like huge types of reptiles. And it's kind of hard to say which dinosaurs actually were a lot common. I would actually say the prosauropods would actually have been the most common, like Plateosaurus, Ankylosaurus, all those types of prosauropods, Massospondylus, But basically, it's just that the dinosaurs in the Triassic were so rare that it's pretty much dominated by the ancient reptiles, basically, just archosaurs and these primitive plant-eating reptiles and all that sorts of stuff. But when we get to the Jurassic was actually was when dinosaurs really took over. That's when they actually kind of like were all around the globe and actually just dominated. But in terms of carnivorous dinosaurs, the carnivorous dinosaurs that were so common around the Jurassic were basically the megalosaurs, the allosaurs, and some ceratosaurs. Basically those types of theropods, in which are meat-eating basically dinosaurs that actually that are bipedal and actually have basically stand on two legs, and they actually most of them eat meat, so pretty much kind of that way. Yeah, so it would be the megalosaurs, the allosaurs, and the ceratosaurs, basically. The ceratosaurs were pretty much like Dilophosaurus and Ceratosaurus. Allosaurs would actually just be like Allosaurus and Yanchuanosaurus. And also you actually have the megalosaurs, which would be Megalosaurus, Saurophaganax, all those kinds of dinosaurs. And so those kinds of dinosaurs. But the most common plant-eating dinosaurs in the Jurassic were basically the sauropods. The sauropods dominated. The diplodocids would actually be the most common because you see there's a lot more diplodocids than like other types of sauropods. Like there's not that many brachiosaurs that have been found, so basically there's kind of actually a low number of brachiosaurs, and also there's a low number of chimerosaurs and not as many apatosaurs. So pretty much that would actually kind of come into play there. But I mean, you also have like some of the armored types of dinosaurs like stegosaurs. Stegosaurs were dominant in the Jurassic. But when we get into the Cretaceous is basically a widespread of dinosaurs. The early Cretaceous, it was dominated by Carcharodontosaurids and the Titanosaurs. So pretty much those would actually be the dinosaurs that would be really common. Also the Iguanodontids would actually have been very common. So Iguanodontids were everywhere around the world during the Cretaceous. And Carcharodontosaurids, they were mostly around South America and Africa. I mean, we got like a proto Carcharodontosaurid and Acrocanthosaurus and Siats, those types of dinosaurs. But even though they're more common in South America and Africa. And then the Titanosaurs, pretty much common in the Africa and South America and some parts of the lower continents. They didn't really actually kind of go towards the northern hemisphere that much. But iguanodontids were everywhere around the world. But when we get to the late Cretaceous, the more dominant meat-eating dinosaurs were actually the Tyrannosaurs. The Tyrannosaurs were pretty much the dominant ones. Even the Abylosaurids were actually dominant, but basically Tyrannosaurids dominated the northern hemisphere, Abylosaurids dominated the southern hemisphere. And also the Dromaeosaurs. The Dromaeosaurs were actually very common in most of the northern hemisphere, and some parts of the southern hemisphere, but basically they're very rare. But in the late Cretaceous, there's so many diverse of plant-eating dinosaurs. So you actually have like numerous types of groups out there. Like you have the ceratopsians, you actually have the hadrosaurs, you have the ankylosaurs, and some titanosaurs were still around during this time, but they were near to the end. Basically, they were not really common at all. So they were very rare, and they would have just actually been in small groups of herds, basically. Yeah, so those would be the more common types of dinosaurs. In terms of pretty much of this, Spinosaurus and T-Rex didn't live in the same time. It's just that they lived in the same period, but they lived in different types of time, basically, different types of years in time. Spinosaurus actually lived around 90 million years ago, and Tyrannosaurus Rex actually lived pretty much 68 to 66 or 65.5 million years ago. So pretty much that's a big difference there. And so just so you know that that basically most dinosaurs didn't live in the same time. Basically, it's because you see dinosaurs. Because basically animals in time tend to actually evolve into pretty much evolve to adapt to the changing in environment. So pretty much that's what they actually have to do. They basically have to survive to actually adapt to the new environment, and that's pretty much what happens here. And so pretty much in geologic time, we're closer to Tyrannosaurus than Tyrannosaurus to Stegosaurus. So that really actually kind of makes a really good analogy there. Is basically that humans actually first came to Earth around like say 2 million or 1 million years ago, and then the earliest ancestors were around 4 million years ago. But even though, but like I say, that basically humans 1 million years, Tyrannosaurus Rex 66 to 65.5 million years ago is when the Tyrannosaurus Rex kind of became extinct, or otherwise was the last time it was alive. And then Tyrannosaurus to Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus lived around 150 million years ago. Tyrannosaurus Rex around 68 to 66 million years ago. So that's how it kind of goes. It's basically based on geologic time as how we actually look at life on Earth. Alright, that's it for now. Now, next week will actually be a special episode, and I already got a dinosaur that has been chosen, Saurophilus. So somebody actually suggested that to me, Saurophilus. So I'll actually talk about that duck-billed dinosaur. And so, but even though if you want to add another prehistoric animal to the special episode, feel free to email it to me at dinocris71@gmail.com, or otherwise on the Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts on Dino Chris, and pretty much just let me know, because I can do two animals at the same time, but mainly focused on vertebrates, basically. So that's what I like to talk about. But anyway, you can still send me questions about dinosaurs or any other prehistoric life at any time by emailing me at dinocris71@gmail.com, or otherwise go on the Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts of Dino Chris. Like the page, you can actually post your questions in the comment section on any Facebook post. But remember, keep your questions short and to the point. Don't use the messenger on the Facebook page. And also, you can follow me on Twitter at CSGRALL. That's my Twitter page, and I post pretty cool stuff on there. And also, take care of the people around you. And also, for you younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you can have for a good education. It's very important to have a good education, because with a good education, you get a good job in the future. And one note before I go, and it was great to actually get to do that volunteer work. And I actually have to thank the people that were responsible for Colossal Fossils for having me that opportunity to actually do this, and I actually thank you for that. And also, on this day, it was actually 3 years ago is when I actually started the show. So basically, it's the 3rd-year anniversary. So let's actually keep it going for many more years to come, and hopefully, I continue to inspire to actually learn more about prehistoric life and paleontology in general and geology. All right, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys next week, or this Saturday, basically this Saturday.